Hey, welcome to the Next Level Podcast. I'm Nick Tate, and today I've got a special guest, Mr. Sean Miller. Sean's been a friend of mine for a long time, and I want to kind of go down the same path I did with LeJerick Taylor, because in today's society, you really never know what people are going through, and I think Sean has a completely different insight on life. I'll start everything off kind of where I did with LJ. It was really kind of how social media affects the youth today. Social media, for me, kind of gives children a unrealistic expectation, and it's driven by algorithms that give the negativity over and over and over and over in their life over a 8-second span.
I agree with that.
Okay, so how do you feel directly? And I'm going to tell you, with social media, you kind of gave me a lot of insight in the past of about how much time is really spent on the phone and not really paying attention to the people around you.
It's gotten worse over the years. I just really got on social media.
Right.
For, the reasons I'm on social media now. So it really wasn't a part of my life. Until here recently, just a couple of years ago. And
what was your reason for staying off of social media up until recently? Recently, Sean quit his personal job and started a business where he felt like he needed something else to fulfill him going forward. And so far, you've been pretty successful.
Yeah, correct.
But prior to that, you really weren't a social media guy.
The social media, to me, I felt like it took over people's life.
Yeah.
And everybody has made that cell phone where it is a part of their daily social. Instead of, you meet people in Walmart. You walk past somebody, you say, hey, how you doing? They don't do that no more. Everybody's glued to their phone. They're looking at what somebody else is doing, and they use that platform to be a person that they're not. And when they get on these platforms and they want the attention, go out there and socialize. Get with somebody, talk to somebody, learn somebody, get to know somebody. They do that by phone. So when you look on social media, I feel like somebody can make themselves that they're not. So you really don't know who you are when you go through social media.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I can make myself look completely different. So you really don't know who the other person is that you're paying attention to on social media. So that becomes a bigger issue. It's kind of like when somebody's drinking, they become a person they're not. So you feel the freedom to get on social media and tell people something that you usually wouldn't tell somebody face to face.
Right.
You tell them they're ugly. You tell them they're fat. They're this. They're that.
Because you don't feel like there's any repercussions because you're not in the same room with them, or maybe they'll never find out who you really are.
Correct. So, back in the day, if you had an issue with somebody, you dealt with it. You was face to face. You didn't have social media. You didn't have a phone to hide behind. You didn't, get on Facebook and stalk them and, talk crap about them, whatever the case may be. And then now these days you can hurt a lot of people's feelings that go by this social media, and people base their friends off of how many viewers or how many likes they have on something. So it gives them a presence of I'm needed, I'm wanted, but it leads to bigger things. People can hide behind them phones. They can hide in their home. And you get bigger problems. You get mental problems.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It just, you need social media. I ain't gonna lie to you. I like social media. Even though I'm newly into it, it opened up a different world for me. But I don't make social media my life. If somebody's, if somebody gets on there and tells me I'm ugly, oh well, that's your opinion. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, but it bothers a lot of other people.
It bothers a lot of people.
And
that's, they use social media to a platform that I don't believe was really intended for.
Yeah.
And they use it in a negative way, and a lot of what it hurts is your mental state,
Well, let's break that down. So initially, let's start with the fact that people communicate less due to in-person. People communicate less than they used to because of social media. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. I've seen this time and time and time again. Every once in a while, I travel out of town for work, and you have to go somewhere to eat. So I'll go to a local sports bar or somewhere where people gather. That's how society is. That's where restaurants are and all that other stuff. And what you'll see two people go in the bar, and they'll sit next to each other, and they both got their phones out, and they're texting each other.
Yeah.
They're from me to you.
Yeah.
And they're sending each other emojis and stuff, and they're giggling, ha ha ha, and they're looking at each other. Look what I sent you and what I sent you. And there's no real communication no longer. And we're talking, they're not even a foot apart from each other anymore. No. And that's how kids relate today too. My son's a perfect example. His communication online with other kids is through video games.
Yeah.
And how often he sees those friends is a lot less than how much time he spends talking to them through headphones and microphones and while they play this game versus going out and doing a physical game like basketball or football or whatever. And I'm like you, it deteriorates, that common social entity that everybody needs.
Yeah, I mean, you lose your social skills.
Yeah. And then, again, let's go back to the cyberbullying. You have all kinds of people out there that get off. Misery loves company.
Yes, it does.
And that is one of the biggest things is you'll have people that have nothing else to do. It could be an 80-year-old man, a 50-year-old man, a 35-year-old woman, and they're terrorizing a 14-year-old child, a 15-year-old boy, or 16-year-old girl online, and we've seen it time and time again. And it's been online. There's been plenty of stories. These young kids today committing suicide, where someone else. Heck, I read a story the other day where it was the neighbor. It was a woman who lived next door who was bullying the child next door online.
So
under, like you said, under a fake account, pretending to be somebody completely different.
But some of them use it. They might have been bullied, all right? Mm-hmm. And nobody was there to stop their bully. Mm-hmm. Back in the day when you had a bully, you bust their nose.
Right.
To stop a bully, you either laugh with them or you bust them in the nose.
Yeah.
Society is not like that these days. So if you go to school and you got somebody that's bullying you repeatedly, and there's a lot of suicides out of school because of bullying. They don't have that person that, steps in to help them. That, hey, realizes there's a problem. Sometimes you don't catch the problem right off. But we don't have society stepping in to actually help somebody. They want to pull their phone out to put it on social media.
Yeah, instead of stopping a fight nowadays, what do we do? 10 people pull their phone out and record 2 people fighting.
Correct. And they instigate it.
Yeah. Instead of stopping it.
In some form or fashion, we're all guilty of bullying. But we've all done it. I don't care who you are, what you are. You've bullied somebody at some point. To make yourself feel good. But the long-term effects of how people feel, it might not necessarily be bullying. But if that person feels withdrawal or whatever the mental state is, especially in school, kids these days coming to school, they've got to be a part of a group. They have to feel that need to be wanted, be liked, have to be there. So as groups, they don't necessarily accept somebody that's different. If you're not like us, you're different, we're going to pick on you.
Right.
That's how kids these days, if you really pay attention to social media, that's what you see a lot of, online.
Yeah.
You know, and I really don't know if you can or if you would ever be able to, you know, get a hold of it. You know, I guess it would just depend on society themselves to know when, hey, it's gotten out of control.
Well, some of that starts off in the household with the parents.
Well, you got parents that are bullies.
Well, I mean, you know, like I said, it starts with the parents. Yeah. So, parents limiting their time to their kids on their phone. Parents monitoring what their kids use the phone for. You know, I'm an advocate for walking in my son's room and just taking his phone out of his hand. And I've told him many a times, if you change your passcode to what I don't know, then you lose the phone. So I walk in, put in the code, and see whatever he is at that random time.
You make it your business to get in his business.
And I don't want to, but if I don't, then I'm not going to be able to correct anything that he's doing completely wrong.
Right.
So let's talk about something a little different. Let's talk about how you use social media currently today, since you really didn't use social media, but like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I went a long time.
I mean, you were, if you put Sean Miller in Facebook, there was no Facebook page, right?
Nope.
I think the only Facebook picture of you was on my Facebook page.
That y'all would post, you know? Y'all or my sister or somebody like that. And a lot of them didn't post pictures of me because they knew I didn't like social media.
I just thought it was because you're too big to fit in the frame.
It wasn't I disliked it. I just didn't feel like, you know, if I wanted to communicate with you, I'd just call you on the phone.
Well, I admired that.
You know?
I've always admired that because you showed me in a lot of relationships that I had in my family and everywhere else that you got to put the phone down, you know, because everybody is so glued to it. And taking the phone away actually allows you to connect a little better.
Yeah.
You know?
It does. And, it's kind of like gambling. It is addictive. You know, the phone, the social media, it's addictive. There's times I sit down and I might be doing some invoices or some quotes, and guess what I end up on? TikTok. Social media. Now, a lot of times I'm looking at Facebook.
Okay.
You know, I do have contacts that come through Facebook. So I get myself caught up looking at Facebook. And, you know, kids are running around and, you know, my 5-year-old, daddy. That hits me right there. I need to get off this phone.
Right.
You know, I need to get off. You know, I need to put my attention towards something else. But it does. It opens up the world. You know, social media is not a bad thing.
No.
It opens up the world to benefits. You know, business benefits. Man, I've learned a lot of recipes off TikTok.
Yeah.
You know? And so, in a way, I like it. You know? But it can become an addictive thing. And I've noticed that. You know? I mean, it's not a completely bad thing. I know we're bashing it.
Well, no, we're not really bashing it. The reason...
Well, I did for a while.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
I did for a long time, you know, but... And, you know, I've heard individuals say, you know, I get to connect with family that way.
It's true.
You know, I understand that. My nephew is in Germany. And guess how I connect with him?
Facebook.
Through social media.
Yeah.
You know, so I do see the benefits of it. I see the platforms being used as a tool that they weren't intended for. And that's bullying.
Right.
Suicide. You know, it causes a lot of negative energy that doesn't need to be there.
Well, and I said this on our last episode, the thing with Facebook and TikTok and all this other stuff is what they call the algorithm, is if I stay on one page and I'm looking at this information, whatever it may be, like you said, you're looking at recipes, right? And I'm looking at this recipe and I go and I look at another recipe. Next thing you know, it starts showing me recipes.
You got 15 recipes.
You got 15, yeah, they just popping up left and right. But if I'm in a bad state of mind and I'm looking at, I don't know, some music, and it's sad music, and it's negative music, and you know, maybe I'm looking at people talking about how their relationships are terrible, or how their parents are terrible, or how they just broke up with their ex, and what's the next thing that pops up? Somebody else talking about their ex breaking up, and somebody else talking about how their life is terrible, and the next thing you know, it feeds into the negativity in your brain, and brings everybody down, because the more you expose yourself to, the more you feel. You know, and I mean, I'm a firm believer of this is what you put in your body, like working out, right? If you eat right and you eat healthy, your body grows better, you feel better, but also what you put up here, what you watch on TV, what you take in and absorb mentally, also affects how you think and the way you grow there.
Well, genetics have a lot to do with it too.
Okay.
You know, some people just got bad genetics.
How's that?
Yeah.
you've had good genetics your whole life.
My genetics. I can't say whether they're good or bad.
Sean's an advocate about how great his genetics are.
No, I mean, you know, you take my little brother. He, you know, we all, you know, he was in the gym. You know, we grew up with our parents. You know, we still had the old dial tone phone that you spun around.
Yeah.
You know, and take you 5 minutes to make a phone call. Yeah. So, you know, everywhere your parents went, you went. You didn't get pawned off to somebody. So, you know, when we were growing up, it was me and softball, the gym, and hanging out with your friends. That's what life was about. Gathering, getting together. If one friend had a problem, we all had a problem.
Right.
You know, whether it was mentally, it was physically, you know, family-wise, you know, you were connected with somebody. You was connected with everybody. Time has shifted. You know, we're all going to adapt to what time shifts. But to what it used to be, to what it is now, it's a lot different. You know? And that's just the way the times are. But that's what we were all into. So naturally, you know, growing up, you know, you adapt to what you grew up in. And that's what we grew up in.
Yeah.
Gym, softball, you know, being around. Now, over the years, I have noticed I have withdrawn a lot from people. And some of us, a lot of mental state, you know, life throws you a lot of things. And as a male, you know, we were brought up that men are tough. You don't show feelings. You don't cry. You know, society is a little bit different these days. And I like it. I like the fact that if you got a problem, I want to know it.
They want to expose you like a nerve.
Yeah. You know, and it's nobody's fault for trying to get something out of somebody. People get mad. I get mad. You know, if you push me, hey, what's wrong? You got an issue? You ask that me too many times, I'm going to blow up on you. You know, sometimes I feel like we force the feelings out of people instead of letting them want to talk about it. So, you know, the way things used to be then to what they are now, social media has opened a lot of people up to actually talking about the problems. So that, you know, I give kudos to social media on some platforms of that, but it could be used bad too.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I really wish we would learn as individuals to learn each other personally, you know, face to face.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I tell you, it goes back to the old Spider-Man saying, with great power comes great responsibility.
You're right.
So, let's kind of open you up a little bit here. Let's talk about the real reason you're here today. Sean, just like LeJarrette, went through some very terrible things a few years back. And this is about your brother Matt that you grew up with. Yep. And when I say deeply connected, I mean like Sean and Matt just unbelievably great brothers. And when Sean went through what he did, which I'm hoping you say, you know, you kind of get an opportunity to express all that here in just a second, it was detrimental. He shut down. He blocked the entire world out. And I reached out to him as much as I possibly could at the time because I just knew that at some point there was a line he may have crossed himself because of the losses that he's had. And tell me a little bit about Matt, man, growing up, and you know, we wasn't but 16 months apart. Mm-hmm. Can't really get much closer than that. You know, as brothers or sisters, or pretty much ain't no time lapse there. So, you know, everything we did,
we were together. Even to the point where when we got grown, we kind of, he went his way. He had his friends, I had my friends, but we always came back and was always connected.
Like a rubber band.
Like a rubber band. I mean,
he had his family. You had yours.
Correct.
He started his career. You started their career. You went down.
But there wasn't a day that didn't go by we didn't talk.
Yeah.
Every day, we talked. Even, I started, working at a younger age than what most people do. And even me working off, when I came home, I always made sure I checked on him. I always made sure, when I would call home, they would let me know what's going on. What Matt was doing. He was, travel balling, playing baseball, playing football. How's everything going? I always asked what was going on, even though I wasn't there. And we did the same thing even when he moved to Shreveport. We talked to each other every day, at least one time a day. And, it was that thing where he worked, I worked. If I called him while he was busy, we always made sure we answered the phone. There wasn't a time that, very seldom that we didn't answer the phone. If he called me, I'd tell him, hey, let me call you right back. Let me call you later on.
Heard that before.
He would do the same thing to me. It just let us know, hey, I'm not ignoring you. I'm busy. I'll talk to you later. And that's how we, that's, of course, hunting season. I loved hunting season. I got to sing, I was always excited about hunting season. It was kind of like a middle ground for us to meet up. And, I got to visit with him. Did I go up there as much as I needed to? No. And I regret that every day. There was social events, that I should have went to. There was things that I missed for reasons of my own that I regret to this day. And as humans, we hold grudges that we shouldn't hold. And when you hold them grudges, bear real bad responsibility consequences that you got to deal with later. And I don't care how much you try to push that later off, it never goes away. The weight, the feeling. You can't describe a feeling that of having regret that you can't correct. Most people have the chance to correct, something that they messed up on. I don't. I can't correct that.
Yeah, you can't make it up.
Can't make it up. I can't apologize for it. So it does. It weighs on you, and that's stuff every day you don't forget. You don't forget stuff that you cannot get back.
The time you lost.
Time, conversations, social time, touching, whether it's a 5, fist bump, handshake, patting them on the back, whatever the case may be. That stuff you don't get back.
And the grudges that you held.
Grudges eat me every day.
They seem a lot less immense as they used to. You would have thrown them all away today if you knew how everything had turned out.
What I thought a grudge wasn't a grudge at all.
Exactly.
There's things, when you there's millions of people that deal with this, and it's different situations. It might be somebody that lost contact with somebody that now they wish they wouldn't have done it, or they wish this, or they wish that. You got a lot of wishes, and you have a lot of thoughts that they'll never leave you, ever.
What's one of the things you admired most about Matt?
Him. Just, him being the way he was, his personality. He had one of them personalities that Great guy, but he could be a smart ass. You know, there's been many a times I wanted to slap him. You know, just now, you know, I wish I heard that. You know, I wish I heard little things that bother me, or, you know, memories that I could get back that we take for granted. We take life, we take a relationship for granted.
That happens often.
That happens more than often. You know, everybody use that excuse. Well, you know, life happens.
I'm too busy.
I'm too busy. Or what you could have done, but you put off.
Right.
You know. I mean, there's a lot of things that.
What's one of the funniest things that you remember about him?
Oh man, there's a bunch of them. And I don't talk about them very often.
Well, just give me something.
So, and this was just, you know, probably 6 or 7 years ago. We was up there at the hunting club, and you know, growing up hunting, you know, in the woods, you got them big old banana spiders.
Ooh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
All right. So, I remember we was on side by side, and we was riding the trail, you know, going to a stand or something, and there was a bunch of banana spiders on the trail. And one of the big old banana spiders come up in the side by side with us, and I started messing with him. I said, "You got that banana spider on you?" And that baby doll took off that side by side. I didn't even have time to stop it. And he's taking off, and he trips over a big old vine. And I see this big old banana spider on his back. And I said, "You got a banana spider on your back?" And that baby doll went. But I don't think I ever seen a person that didn't do that.
Well, of course not.
You know, with a spider. You know? I mean, grown men, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like little girls because of the spider. But, you know, I mean, I have a lot of memories. You know, a lot of memories. A lot of memories I forgot until somebody wants me to bring them up. Right. Then suppressed memory starts kicking in. You know, memories that I didn't care to bring up. You know, or happy moments that you tend to forget because you think about the negatives. And I remember being, you know, kids. I remember it was wintertime. We was down there squirrel hunting. Man, we sleep in tents. You know, most people got campers these days. You know, they're modern. You know, we wasn't modern. We didn't have the money to be modern. So we would be sleeping in these tents, and, you know, we would hit, you know, down there in Saline, you know, squirrel hunting, that's a holiday. And everybody was down there. You'd mud ride, and you'd be full of dust. Well, you couldn't go holler at the women, the chicks, with dust and mud all over you, so we would jump in the bay. Daddy'd bring us out there in an aluminum boat. We'd jump out of that bay and take a bath, you know. And it was cold. Man, was it cold. But, you know, that's what we did. And that, you know.
Slicked your hair back.
There wasn't slicking no hair back. Not when you wash your hair with a bar of soap. You know, there wasn't no shampoo. But, you know, it just, day after day after day, until we got grown men, you know. And there's still a lot of things that, you know, even as grown men, we act like little kids. You know, it's like our childhood was still there when we were together. And being close to somebody like that, a lot of people don't understand it. You're going to have turmoil, and you're going to have smiles and laughs, you know. And I don't regret none of it every day, whether it was bad or good. I would take the bad days.
Take them all back today.
I would take them all back today.
So, let's start off, if you don't mind. Can you tell me about the days leading up to the phone call that you got? Because I remember talking to you about this, and, you know, I think there were signs.
There were very few people that knew the phone calls leading up to that. And do I feel comfortable talking about this? In a way, no. Because the whole subject, you know, that I feel, the reason why we want to do this, is most men suppress. Nobody wants to talk about their feelings. Nobody wants to talk about the hard. What's hard to talk about and what's not hard to talk about. This is one of them hard things, but if it'll help somebody somewhere down the line, I'm willing to do whatever we got to do.
And that's why
if we can save a life, that's why we're talking. You know, it was typical. You know, signs there really wasn't no signs. You know, that you think I need to start paying attention. You know, there were certain things that was going on, but it never really raised awareness that, hey, I need to go to Shreveport. I need to start spending more time up there. I need to, you know, see what's going on. I had talked to him probably about a week prior to that because the 4th of July was coming up. And last time we got together was, you know, of course, holidays and stuff. But I remember they had come down. I want to say it was Father's Day. And, you know, we grilled some pork steaks and stuff like that. And we got talking about the next holidays and this and that. And I called him up. And I wanted to do the same thing. I said, hey, what y'all doing for the 4th of July? And, of course, they lived up there, you know, around Toledo Bend and everything. And they got their friends up there. And I said, why don't y'all come down? He said, no, we already, you know, we're going to Toledo Bend. You know, we're going to get on the boat and, you know, hang out with a lot of people up there. Okay, you know. Man, I wish I would come down. And so leading up to all that, he sounded fine. Sounded like, you know, Matt Miller that I knew. And didn't think nothing about it. Didn't have no reason to think about nothing. If you remember the conversation that I had a while ago, that if we were busy, we would tell each other we'd call him back. The day before, he calls me. I'm at work. That was right after I had a shoulder surgery. My first shoulder surgery on my left shoulder. And so I was sitting there. And
was that right when you were trying to bench press 600?
That was after.
Right after.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there, you know, just a normal day. And he calls me middle of the day, which wasn't nothing unusual about that. I get to talking to him on the phone, and we were talking about his truck. He was having EGR problems. I told him he needed to delete that crap. We're having a normal conversation. And probably talked 15, 20 minutes. And I told him, I said, hey, let me call you back later. I'm at work. Normally, you know, I hear, okay, bye. You know, and that was it. And, you know, in the phone call. I didn't hear that. All right. He kept talking. Kept wanting to talk. Kept, you know, just carrying the conversation from one conversation to the next conversation to the next conversation.
He needed something.
So I'm sitting there talking to him, and I remember asking, bro, hey, let me call you back. You know, like, you know, I'm at work. I'll call you back. And he'd just keep talking. You know, I mean, would normal people pick up on that? I don't know. You know, I didn't. You know, I didn't have no reason to look outside the scope of why it was going on. You know, it just... So we probably stayed on the phone for about an hour. Way longer than we've ever stayed on the telephone. So we're just talking about all kinds of crap. And this is one of the things that, you know, haunts me a lot. I finally convinced him I need to get off the phone. I said, hey, I'll call you back later. And he said, okay. And we got off the phone. That was the last time I talked to him.
That was tough.
No, it's still tough. You know, I mean, it's still, you know, that's one of the things that haunt me every day. What if I'd have called him back that evening? What if I'd have called him? What if I'd have talked to him?
So,
what if I had picked up on something?
From the time that you had that conversation to the time that you got the phone call, what had happened, how long was it?
The next day.
Next day. Man, do you mind going through all of that?
I'll tell you some of it.
Okay.
You know, I'm not going to.
I got you.
You know, maybe if you want to do this, you know.
Oh.
I know there's one thing that you don't never want to hear. You know, we grow up that we're supposed to, as a parent, we're supposed to go for what our kids do. So that phone call I got that morning that's a sound that I never want to hear again, ever. That is probably the worst that that phone call. And I really can't tell you, once I heard what I heard, of what my results of action was. It's almost like, you hear about friends passing. You hear, your grandpa dies, but you're leading up to it. Old age taking over,
There was some acceptance if someone was older. You kind of saw it coming.
It's kind of like an old dog. When they quit moving around, it's coming. This is one of them situations that, it's kind of like you getting in a car wreck. It's unexpected. You don't know what's going to happen. So, of course, the trauma that goes through your body is undescribable. I can imagine somebody getting shot or somebody getting blown up. The trauma that that your body endures is it's something I never and that's what our loved ones, when they decide whatever the issue is that is too great to do what they're going to do, they don't realize what they're doing to the loved ones when they do it. You leave everything for us to recoup and relearn. Yeah, you might have solved whatever issue you thought you had, and there ain't no issue, not one single issue that I can think of on good God's earth to make you think that's the end result. Because I swear, I promise you, whatever issues you had, you just left it for everybody else. Plus 100 that everybody has to deal with. That you have to recoup from. That you have to wake up in the middle of the night thinking. It just... It's a lot.
I can tell.
Leading up to that, when I left work that day, when I got that phone call, I went through Crayola. I don't remember going through Crayola. I remember talking to the cop when he pulled me over. I went to the house. I changed my clothes for some ungodly reason. Your body, your mental state takes over. You're doing things that you don't realize that you're doing. It's hard to explain. That's the scope of what your body takes over. And I probably made it to Shreveport, probably about 45 to 50 minutes.
That's about a 2-hour drive.
That's a 2-hour drive. But I have one thing in my head that
you didn't want to accept what had happened.
Oh, no. I mean, you're still in that, do I believe this phase? Do I believe this just happened?
It's still some kind of hope, even though it may or may not be real.
Yeah, but the biggest thing, and you can always find your caregivers, because what went through my mind probably the first, until I got up there, was I gotta save him. That was the biggest thing. I gotta help him. But it wasn't there, the help was already gone. And that's something that we don't realize And everybody says, man, I should have noticed the signs. I should have noticed this. I should have noticed that. You're not. You're not. What we should have paid attention to is already gone. And I don't think some situations you ever really grasp to the point that you need to pay attention. You know, it's just not there. The signs that everybody claims that they should have paid attention to,
you don't see till it's over,
or you don't see it all. You still don't notice them. You know, like you can say, well, you know, that was odd. You know, I should have picked up on that. He don't never do that, or she don't never do that. There's certain things that you're not going to. Some people just, and that's the bad thing about suicide, is there ain't that many here to talk. You know, just like a handful of therapists that I've talked to, I've sat down and, you know, some of them friends. That's just something that you can talk to the ones that attempted it. You know, and it's not enough out there. It's not enough to, because you got to look at free will. You know, if you decide to cut your arm, you know, you're going to do it.
While you're still trying to process everything that happened, I know that you became super reclusive.
I still am to a point.
Yeah, but I mean, you didn't talk to nobody.
Nope.
And what, during that time that you were trying to process this and you were by yourself, did you ever think about doing that to yourself?
No, I did not. Because of the physical effects of what it did to me. All right.
Did it make you want to change your life at any point?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, not for the reason that, I'm not going to do, you know, I'm not going to make the same mistake.
No, but I mean, like, what did you realize in those moments that you had been neglecting, or you had refused to change, or you needed to take advantage of the time?
We always, do I need to take advantage today of, you know, what you always need to do? No, not to an extent. You know, but we still use the daily word of I'm too busy, or, you know, we take a lot of stuff for granted. The stuff that we don't pay attention to. You know, yeah, I did recluse, and I still do it from time to time. You know, my sister the other day, I went over there, sat in her office with her, and she said, you know, I'm just now starting to notice you being you. But it comes and goes. You know, like, you're going to have your good days, you're going to have your bad days, and I'm willing to expect it's going to be like that for a long time. You know, you can't really say when you're going to be good and when you're not going to be good. You know, there's going to be times where you just don't want to be bothered. You know, and some people take that in a bad way, you know, because some people want to help you. And that's what we don't notice when we need the help. You know, I mean, everybody, if you live life, you're going to be in a dark place at some point in life.
It affects everybody.
It affects everybody, you know, and, you know, if somebody says, oh no, I'm perfect, it don't exist. You know, I mean, I've had my moments. I've had my moments that I've had one moment I shouldn't be here. You know, I shouldn't be talking to you. You know, it just, things happen for a reason. We don't know them reasons, but they do. You know, and how we take day by day, it don't just consist of yourself, and I'm learning that. I'm learning that a lot. I texted my sister-in-law and told her what I was going to do today. You know, she texted me this morning and said, "Hey, I love you."
So let's bring it up just real quick, Wyatt, before you go any deeper. You did take on a lot after all this happened with your sister-in-law
Yes.
and her family.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, they came and lived with me. I mean, it's two different families living in one spot. We made it work. I love my nephews. I love my sister-in-law. I do anything in the world for them. And, the crazy thing about it, I told them, and I looked at it. When I took them in, there was no second guess. There was no second question. There was no, the first thing I said, if something would have happened to me, Matt would have done the same thing. Because, you got to look at it. They're a replica of my brother, And do I see them as often as I need to? No. And that's where we use the word, life happens. They don't live 10 minutes down the road from it. Do I need to see them more? Yeah. Do I wish I could see them more? Yeah. But I do have a nature of when I don't feel myself, I recluse. I don't want to deal with nobody. I don't want to talk about my feelings. I don't want nobody asking me about my feelings. When I'm ready to tell you about it, I'm going to tell you about it.
In your way.
In my way. Everybody's got a way. And that's what I'm hoping to achieve out of this, that include myself. There's nothing wrong with talking. There's nothing wrong with telling somebody, hey, I feel this way. Sometimes all it takes is talking. Sometimes it takes a hug. People done got to where they don't want to touch you. Hey, I don't want no part of that. He's crazy. Something wrong with him. But that's how we look at people these days.
Yeah.
Instead of reaching out and saying, hey, bud, you all right? You good?
You sure are touching me a lot.
We pull back and we say, hey, I don't want no part of that. I don't want to get mixed up into that.
Yeah.
Now I kind of look to do that. Social media. And so we brought up, social media earlier. And I've kind of, over this ordeal, I've kind of learned to pay attention to people a little bit more. Pay attention to what people say, how they act, what they do. It's kind of like another sense that kicked in. Because really, I don't want to see anybody else get that phone call. I don't want somebody to hear a phone call just like I did. I promise you, it's not a phone call that you're ever going to forget. So if I can help, if I can say, hey, drop your masculinity, talk to somebody. Swallow your pride. Who cares if they think it's dumb? Who cares if they say, hey, suck it up, buttercup? Who cares? If it'll save your life, let's talk.
Watching you go through all this has opened my eyes over the years. And that fear is always in my mind with my children. And my son, and this just happened last week, to be exact. But I see these things that I feel like I have to intervene with because of stories like yours and things that you've been through, where I went to his room and he's facing the back of his bed.
Which is not normal.
It's not normal.
It's not normal.
And I can tell something's wrong. And he's been with the same girl for two-ish, I'm going to say about 2 years, and they have very, very strong feelings for each other. And there's always some kind of drama, and it's because they're growing and trying to experience and understand each other. But you can tell something's wrong. I'm like, hey, buddy, you okay? I'm fine. Go away. Dad, I'm fine. Go away.
All signs.
And I'm like, are you okay? And he doesn't want to answer. He's still facing the back of the bed. And I leave. I give him a little space. Go and do what I got to do. I come back in there, and I'm like, hey, bro, what's wrong? And he just kind of, just leave me alone. And I go sit in his chair right next to his bed, and I just look at him. I say, I ain't leaving until you tell me something.
Yep.
And he just started crying.
But,
And let me finish this real quick because it kind of leads into similar. He just started crying, just started bawling. He said, I don't want to be here. He said, I don't even know why I have a reason to live. He said, all I want to do is play football, and that's not even a good idea. And I said, what is wrong? And, of course, he broke it into the girl. And I had to explain to him that I understand how you feel right now, but this feeling is momentary. And it's going to hurt. And it may hurt forever. Whatever y'all are going through, you know, they made up a couple days later. But the problem is, for that one solid moment, he didn't want to be on earth.
He felt like his worth was gone.
It was gone. And it affects everyone.
Everybody.
And it's not, it could be a moment like this. It could be a moment like, I'm sure you have multiple stories. Like you said, there was a moment you weren't supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes you have to step in and interject just to get someone to open up to you. Because my son's just like you when it comes to masculinity. He does not want to open up to no. He thinks tough is tough, and that's all he's got to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've tried to get him over the years to be a little softer, and it don't work. He just built like that.
You know, speaking of that, masculinity, you know, I had one of my nephews. The nephews love to hear stories about their daddy. All right? And I had one of them ask me, he said, Uncle Sean, how come I don't ever see you cry? How come you ain't crying about this? Well, at some point, you have to show that it's okay to hurt. So I did. I told him, I said, buddy, I said, I got to be strong for y'all. I said, I got to be strong for everybody. I said, but let me tell you something. I said, Uncle Sean cries. I said, I do it in the comfort of myself. He said, but why don't you let us see you do it? I said, it's just not what I do. And there, you know, don't take it for granted. I mean, there's a lot of people see me cry. You know, it happens.
And you look like a big baby when you do
look
it.
like a little, you know, little sissy. You know, but that's how we think.
Yeah.
You know, show no hurt. And I think that's a message that we put across to everybody, you know, of, yeah, we're going to be soft. You know, we're men. We have feelings, you know, just like anybody else. And like you take your boy, you know, he felt the same way. And I know exactly what he was feeling. Hey, I'm supposed to be tough. You're not supposed to be talking to me about this. You know, I'm a man. You know, just leave me alone.
Yep.
That's what you hear. Leave me alone. I deal with it how I'm going to deal with it. And that's the problem is, you know, there is a time to push and there's a time not to push. There's a time when you have to step in and say, no, you're not being tough today.
And I had to do that.
But we don't do it enough.
And what was funny is, as soon as he broke down and cried, and as soon as he got it all out, probably for the next 24 hours, he was up my butt.
Yep.
Wherever I was at, he was going with me. Because he
understood.
And he would keep talking.
Yeah,
randomly, he would keep bringing up stuff about the issue he's trying to process through.
But see, he's wanting to talk about it.
But he didn't. If I'd have left him in that room staring at the back of his bed, what would have happened? So
now, sometimes, you know, if you think about it, if you pay attention, you know, we don't pay attention enough. That's the problem. Is we shrug off somebody that does want to talk. Oh, I ain't got time for this. You know, go on. You know, whatever. You know, hey, quit being a little bitch. Go on. We don't accept somebody wanting to talk. And usually, when somebody's having a problem, and when they initiate that talk, it's telling us they want to talk. Let's listen. Let's see if we can help them. Let's see, you know, because I know a lot of guys, man, that you know just as well as I do. You got a lot of dudes out there. You're like, man, poke that dude with a thorn. He won't even flinch. That's a hard up dude. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's her. You don't want to look like a little girl in front of them. You know, you don't want to show feeling. You know, somebody like that.
Well, it kind of goes back to your story with your nephews. I kind of see your situation as like this. as a man, especially after your brother has passed, now you're the man now. Like you have to be a man.
Well, no, you got old Pops Miller first.
Well, I mean, you're the man over the family, and you took in another family. Now you're kind of like a dad to two different families at this point in time, but
in a different way. You know, I could never ever, you know,
replace.
Right. You know, I'll in a way, you know, I admit it. You know, there's a lot of ways I did it wrong, but I was also trying to process. I was trying to be the person that everybody needed to stand there and be the directional. Hey, that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. I didn't have time to process. I didn't have time to, you know, I had my family. I had the boys and Megan. You know, you feel like you've got to be the center that holds everything together. Hey, my sister don't feel good. I've got to step in. I've got to make her good. My parents don't feel good. I've got to help them. I've got to make sure they're okay. You know, your own self, you can get wrapped up in your own self of not processing that you forget to process. And I think that's where a lot of the sleepless nights, waking up, not going to sleep, brain never shuts down, is, I think it's a way of me trying to process and don't know it.
It's trying to come out, and you never let it happen.
Exactly. I mean, I was over there. I was over there at the boys' house not too long ago, and I broke down. You know, in front of my sister-in-law, I broke down. I waited till everybody left out of there.
Well, get out, everybody! I got to do something.
You know, I mean, but it was you know, it was not like I timed it that way, but no. It's just you know, I kind of looked at it as somebody that understands when I broke down, you know. And yeah, you know, did I feel like a weak? Yeah, I did. You know, because it's not in our DNA to be weak. I'm supposed to be strong for them, not me breaking down in front of them.
Well, what I was trying to get to a little while ago was that, and I feel like this as a father and as someone who leads their family, children, so forth, so on, that as that guy, that tough guy like you're talking about, you know, it's everybody. You feel like everybody else needs the opportunity to let go, and someone has to be there to keep everything together.
To allow it.
And if you break down, you're not going to be able to function to keep them together. So you let them cry, you let them get it out, while you stand tough to make sure that all the boxes get checked, you know, throughout the day. So just let's kind of go through the whole funeral situation where you had to make sure that the arrangements got made and everything. While everybody else is grieving, you're trying to put everything together.
Now, I give it to the family. Like, that was a process, you know, that a lot of it was taken care of. You know, we were all in a process. There wasn't not one person that took the dominance of what was going to happen. There, you know, and like I said, everybody's brains jumble. You know, you're trying to process it. You're trying to, you know, it's almost getting chased by a lion. Could you tell me what you was thinking when you were getting chased by a lion?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that's
especially if you didn't catch me.
You know, endorphins. That's how your body processes. Is you get flooded. You know, you get flooded, and you see somebody go through something trauma. They lose weight. They either lose weight, gain weight. You know, they don't look healthy. It's the way their body's processing.
They either stop eating, eat too much for comfort.
Yeah.
They starve themselves.
Me, I stay busy.
That's true.
You know, you know, when I tell everybody, everybody's like, man, you don't ever stop. I can't. If I stop, my brain catches up with me. You know, a lot of people understand that. A lot of people don't. You know, I say, you know, he was the same way. You know, your brain catches up with you. You can physically sit up there and you can think something that's not true, that you know mentally it's not true, but you can sit there and convince yourself it's true. You know, mental illness is a real thing.
Yeah.
You know, I've looked like a dummy several times because you have time to sit there and stew and think. Get out of the house. Get off the daggum cell phone. You know, go outside, mow grass, weed eat. You know, quit being lazy.
Take care of your environment. Be proud of what you have.
Yes.
And then.
Now, that's one thing. That little booger wasn't there. Like, that baby doll, you know, he was just like the rest of it. He's got to keep himself busy. You know, they like the whatever, mowing grass. Man, he would have had 3 boys on lawnmower with him. You know, I wouldn't even let my kids get on lawnmower.
Yeah.
You know,
well, maybe he didn't want to let them go.
Well, you know, I mean, that's what you got to do sometime. You know, I mean, there was a lot of things, you know, that there's aspects of them that I wish I could be. You know, you don't pay attention that you can learn. You know, because that's like you put me and you in a room. You know, we're gonna see who's most dominant. You know, that's how me and him was. Mm-hmm. You know, we go up there, we shake hands, we see who can squeeze a hand the hardest. You know, we got to be dominant. You guys drop your nuts. You know, and that's how we was a lot. And you know, come up there and want to arm wrestle and crap. You know, I just everything that I don't have a chance to have, I want back. We don't realize that. We take everything for granted. You know. That's why, like, sometimes you call me on the phone, I don't answer the first time, you call me 5 more times. Aggravating the crap, you know? I do the same thing to you.
Oh, man.
You know?
What about yesterday?
Oh.
It was, what time we doing this? And then the next one was, hey, you going to give me a time or what?
Yeah, I got stuff to do. But, I mean, communication, you know,
I'm trying to deal with stuff at the house, trying to make it to where we can do this, and then I'm getting these multiple text messages. Hey.
Now I wish, you know, we get mad about that. That's the small stuff that we should be cherishing. To be honest with you.
Well, yeah.
You know, I wish every day I could get his smart ass comments back.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
You know, I mean, you know, aggravating.
Two of you is tough, buddy.
Want to beat the crap out of them, you know. Piss you off so bad, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I give anything in the world to get that back. You know. There's a lot of stuff, you know. Just
tell me one thing that, based on your experience, that now you pay it forward to benefit the rest of the world or someone specifically.
Learn how to listen and talk. Open up. That's probably the hardest thing that we don't do is, you know, we forgot how to communicate. I think if we learn how to communicate more, we will realize more of a problem. You know, just like you said, you know, when I'm going through an issue, a lot of y'all have learned that when I start getting quiet and you don't really start hearing from me, you know, 4 or 5 days go by and you ain't heard.
Time to go to the shop.
Y'all call me. You know, hey, look, this ain't normal. You all right? What's up? You know, but y'all learned to pay attention. You know, y'all know, hey, I've done learned you. You know, like to a point that you're not learning that you care more than what you know. And you don't even realize it. We do it every day. We do it to the ones that are closest to us. But we have learned, we have forgot how to pay attention to the ones that's not close to us. You know, you hear all these game shows, you know, let's see who knows their spouse the most. It should be the same way with friends. It should be the same way with anybody you contact. But as humans, we don't load up, that's creepy. Why do you want to know that about me? It's not the fact of being creepy. It's the fact of knowing who you are. There ain't nothing wrong with that.
That way you can find the triggers.
Yeah, so social media. I was going to say it a while ago. I got away from it. Social media. I've got some people on there. I don't know who they are. Never met them in my life. But they're friends with me on Facebook. And I've had a couple of them. One of them we actually know mutual. I'm not going to say their name, But I picked up on some stuff they were putting on Facebook. I did it yesterday. A friend of mine that I've known for a long time. I've noticed they said stuff that's not out of the norm. One of them I don't know at all. I messaged them. Said, hey, I don't know you. I've never met you. I know you live somewhere relevant close. I said, but I picked up on what you said on Facebook. I said, are you okay? Some of them might look at it as creepy. Some of them, hey, you need to mind your own business. But what if that person did just need to talk? I don't have to know you, for you to say, hey, yeah, I got a problem. I need help.
Stranger or not, you see certain signs.
And believe it or not, if you really pay attention to Facebook, if you pay attention to what people post, that tells you a lot to who they are too. If you're always, hey, Tate always posting this is what he likes, and then all of a sudden you detour. You start sending dark stuff. You're sitting in your bedroom by yourself, and just like you said, these reels keep on coming up of dark places, and then your mind starts going. Your mind starts running. Hey, you know what? I don't matter to nobody. Ain't nobody called me. Ain't nobody texted me.
And that happens to a lot of people.
I think
it probably happens to everybody at some point.
It does.
And it's not on purpose. It just happens to be that, people either overworked at work or, like right now, softball, baseball is a big deal. So everybody's going, and
that one person ain't
nothing going.
And, and that's how it goes. You feel like you're not wanted or you're not worth. We've made it to a point where we make people believe they ain't worth. Oh, you don't make $150K a year? You ain't shit. That's showing you're not worth. You're not up to our level.
Right.
Why are you here? Why are you in society?
That'll tear people down.
That will tear, because what does everybody look to each other like? If you drive a $110,000 truck, man, he got his shit together. He got a $110,000 truck.
Or you can have that $30,000 truck that's paid off that you ain't paid a note on in 5 years.
So where does that measure your worth? That somebody is worth?
Well, a lot of people see worth in materialistic stuff.
That's all we do now.
And a lot of people will drive a new vehicle, or I've seen a lot of people talking about wealth building.
Yeah.
Telling you online, hey, when you fly somewhere, fly first class. Pay that extra money. Reason is you get a feel for what it's like to be successful. And that's similar, in the sense that materialistic or experiences create that worth up here.
But we're telling each other, all right? If you look at mental state, if I go to my job, all right, and I don't feel like I accomplished nothing, then I don't feel great. I don't feel like I'm placed.
Right. You lose purpose.
So that could be a trigger for you. For me to say, oh, you ain't nothing.
Yeah.
Hey, you drive a 1992 Ford Ranger.
I love that Ranger.
But that's how you should be thinking. But we don't, because we look at it now. Now I'm judging myself because you're judging me. because of what I drive. But let's say mentally I'm not screwed tight. And let's say I've already been on that edge of, why am I here? What's my purpose? Why am I here? Why ain't nobody gonna notice if I'm gone? They don't notice me now. Or are they gonna notice me then? And yes, take it for granted, a lot of people notice you after.
Oh, everybody. Why did he do that? They forget everything. But like you said, everybody after, yeah.
You know, I mean, time heals. All right? Memories never heal. Memories never go away. Time does. Wealth, money, everything else that we think makes us, it's all irrelevant. It means nothing. The only thing that means anything is the person next to you. That's what means something. Not what kind of shoes you wear. Not what kind of truck you drive. Not what kind of boat you have. None of that crap matters.
Keep talking about my truck.
You ain't got one.
You keep talking about my 1992 Ranger.
Hey, but look, all my trucks are old. You know?
Yeah, they paid for it, though.
They pay for it. You know, I'm happy about that.
Yeah,
you know?
I've noticed that. And they're really loud.
So,
hey, I know when you're coming down through the neighborhood, homie. Because I'm like, he's here. I can hear you down the neighborhood.
So, my sister-in-law sent me something yesterday.
Okay.
All right. And she said, joy comes in the morning. The pain that one is feeling, the moment will pass, but the pain of the loved ones left behind never ends. You heard me say that earlier. You know, everything, you know, memories. You heard me say a memory. Oh, man, I got a bunch of them. You know, I can't remember some of them. You know, it's what we choose to remember to what we don't choose to remember. You know, because that one stigma of memory might be too much for me. It might be what my mental state is hanging on to. You know, but just like you said, you know, drag some of that stuff up. You know, it's what helps us, and we don't realize it. You know, talking about it, remembering. It's also what I feel like it can bring up some bad stuff. It can bring up some good stuff. I think it can help you. You know, not everybody's the same, though. You know, what might help me might not help you. Might have to bring a different approach to get you to talking. Which, me and you've been knowing each other for 20 plus years. So, over the years, we have learned each other. We have learned to notice when something's off. You take my little brother, all right? And you always say you should have noticed. You should have noticed this. You should have noticed that. Or, why didn't I catch this? Why didn't I catch that? Because we come norm. There's things that I miss with you that I didn't notice. But what we learn to notice is off words. You know, something that you don't normally say. Like his phone call that day. Staying on the phone. That should have been a trigger to me that something ain't right. But we look past that. You know, key things that we say. Now, if he would have said, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, that'd have been a different story. You know, I'd have been in Shreveport that day.
Right.
Not everybody opens up like you think they should. The perfect world of what a lot of therapists say doesn't exist to a person that really doesn't want to open up, but they got a problem. How do I get you to notice my problem without me talking about it? That's what we don't know.
So we're gonna wrap this up, Sean.
Oh, let me finish reading this.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Well, that's what I want you.
You got me talking now.
I want you to give
All
me
right.
something to conclude this on. So give me some good stuff.
Speak up if you're having thoughts, if you're down, which we've been talking about that. It's okay not to be okay. That's something that we forget. You know, it's that strong dominant. Hey, if I'm not okay, you're not okay, so I'm going to be okay. You know, we forget all that. Mm-hmm. It's okay not to be okay, but tell someone so they can help you. See, that's something we don't do. But see, she's telling me this because she went through the same thing I did. You know,
shared the same experience.
Exactly. You know, therapists are not just for girls or for sisters. All right. A neutral person to talk to is always helpful. All right. Just to have to find the best ones. Love you. You know, she's talking the same way. You kind of get a sense of different stuff once you've gone through something. You know, and that's how a lot of people get their experience, because they've lived through it. You know, but it's up to us to try to help when you learn. There's people that's going to reject that help. They don't feel like they need that help. But we do. We need to, you know, if you don't know this person in Walmart and they look down, you know, hygiene's a big thing too. People letting go of their hygiene is a sign.
That's true.
I ain't saying go through Walmart and smell people, you know, but
oh, is that what you're thinking?
But if they look distraught,
that's the first thing you related to. Somebody smelling a certain way. You know? Don't go smell people.
If they smell like onions, you know something ain't right.
They ain't right. Onions have layers.
You know, I mean, I could sit down with you for a month and talk about this.
Yeah.
You know, but the end result of me, you know, wanting to do this, ain't even talking about it, you know, because it's uncomfortable for me. You know, talking about my feelings. Anybody, you know, it's uncomfortable. It's not something that you just regularly want to do. But if I can help somebody, you know, if I can save one person.
And that's what we're doing this for.
Me talking about my feelings is worth it 1,000,000 times. You know? And there's a lot of people might joke about, oh, look at this goofy dude, you know. I don't care. I don't care if they feel this way about how we look doing this or how we're talking about it, because I'm not politically correct with my language.
We know that.
But I don't care. If that one person watches it and says, you know what, I'm going to talk to somebody, then I succeeded in what I needed to do.
Tell you something, I picked up on what your sister had told you. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It's normal for everyone to go through phases in which they're not okay. And reaching out, just like you're preaching right now, and letting everybody know that you're not okay may help you.
I hope it helps.
All right. Well, Sean, I appreciate you being here today.
Yep.
I really do. And I know this was really tough for you to come and express everything. And maybe we'll get you on another show.
It took you a minute to get me going.
Oh, man. I know. All right, guys. Well, look, till next time, we're probably going to have Sean and LJ on another episode. But leave your comments down below. Reach out to us if you can. If you need anything, you know where we're at.